Welcome to the Check-In with Dillan, the place where we slow down, get curious, and make people make sense. I'm Dillan Koch, a therapist, mom of three, and someone who believes that when we understand what's happening underneath the surface, we can respond to ourselves and each other with much more honesty, compassion, and intention. So let's check in. I want you to think back about an adult from school who really noticed you. And it's not necessarily the teacher who taught your favorite subject or gave you the best grade, but the person who saw something in you before you could fully see it in yourself. Before my freshman year, I moved to a new school district, and I came in carrying grief and experiences that most people around me probably couldn't see. But certain teachers and coaches noticed me. They challenged me, believed in me, and helped pull forward a version of myself I didn't even know existed. That's part of why this conversation feels so personal. I'm sitting down with Superintendent Kristen Bawks, not only as a therapist and social worker, but as a graduate of her school district, and now as a parent raising children in the same district that helped shape me. Because school is never just a place where children learn to read, write, or solve equations. It's one of the first places where children learn whether adults can be trusted, whether making a mistake means they've failed, whether asking for help is safe, whether someone will notice when they're not okay, and ultimately whether they belong. We know that feeling connected to school and to caring adults can be protective for children's mental health, learning, and overall well-being. But that kind of connection can't depend on one extraordinary teacher sacrificing everything to hold it all together. It takes a system. It takes educators, administrators, school social workers, counselors, families, therapists, healthcare providers, community organizations, and policymakers working together instead of operating in separate silos. And that's the nuance I hope we hold throughout this episode. Schools are often where a child's needs first become visible, but schools can't and probably shouldn't be expected to solve every problem a child or family is carrying. I'm sorry, but teachers cannot be expected to teach, provide crisis intervention, address food insecurity, manage rapidly changing technology, compensate for inaccessible healthcare, and absorb the consequences of underfunded systems without meaningful support themselves. In this conversation, Superintendent Kristen Bawks and I talk about the entire ecosystem surrounding a child. Relationships and rigor, mental health and academics, teacher burnout, school funding, safety, smartphones, artificial intelligence, and what it really means to prepare children for a future none of us can fully predict. This is my conversation with St. Joseph Public Schools Superintendent Kristen Bawks. First and foremost, I always want to say thank you, Kristen, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. What I always love to start with is who is this person that I'm talking to? Yes, you are the superintendent of St. Joseph Public Schools in Michigan, but you didn't start there. And so if you want to give us a little bit of background on who you are and how did you get here?
Sure. Thank you for asking, and thank you for having me on. I started my career in St. Joseph, but grew up on the east side of the state. I just finished my 22nd year in St. Joseph.
Wow.
Started as a first grade teacher at E.P. Clark, then moved to second grade for most of my teaching career. Spent some time in the school office at E.P. Clark as a dean of students, back to the classroom, and then ended up as a principal at Brown Elementary, and then moved to central office to be the assistant superintendent. Spent some time in elementary curriculum as well when I was working as the principal at Brown School. So I've held a variety of different roles in the school system, and I absolutely love it here. I'm a mother of two. My two kids are at St. Joseph High School. Very proud of them. I'm a wife of a retired state trooper. We live in St. Joseph. We love the community and just love being a part of what it means to be a bear.
Yes. So I'm also a St. Joe graduate of 2012. I didn't grow up in St. Joe, but I moved here before my freshman year of high school. And so I graduated from St. Joe High School. I feel like it prepared me very well for where I went in my life and career.
That's terrific. That's terrific.
Yeah.
A lot of bear pride in our community, for sure.
A lot of bear pride. And I should mention that I also have 3 children myself, and my oldest is going into second grade. And then I have a new one that's starting in kindergarten. It's cool because I wasn't here for elementary and middle school, so it'll be kind of interesting. We have been so lucky. Lisa Knuth, amazing. All of the teachers that we've gotten to work with so far have just been so patient and
incredible.
I'm very glad to hear that.
Yes. So I love that you've had these different positions, and maybe that's common for a superintendent, because I feel like it just gives you a bigger and more depth view as you're at the top of the district making all these really important decisions. When did you make the decision to go from the classroom to higher up, and what was that like for you?
Sure. I'll say I think it is a little bit unique for a superintendent to be in the same district for so many years and to kind of move into different roles within the district. So I feel very fortunate. Work with an amazing board of education, amazing administrative team. So we're very lucky. As soon as I received my teaching certificate, I knew that I wanted to go back to school to just learn more about the art of teaching. So in my first year of teaching, I began my master's program, and I didn't go into administration at that time. I just wanted to be the very best teacher I could be, and I was striving to keep learning and keep growing. After a few years in the classroom, I was afforded the opportunity to be a part of district improvement teams and just saw the power in learning all of the data and what drives our instruction and what evidence-based practices look like. And it was very intriguing to me. So I did have the opportunity to move into the school office and work as a dean of students. So I learned a little bit more about the discipline side of what elementary school looks like and how to support students as they navigate tricky things. And also learned about what it takes to make some big decisions in programming.
Yeah.
Was able to sit in on meetings where we talked about student progress and the need for further growth. And that really inspired me to want to learn more about the principalship. I love to teach. I loved my time in the classroom. But I knew that when the opportunity came, I would be excited to move into a leadership role at a building level. So the opportunity came. I knew I wanted to stay in St. Joe. I felt incredibly supported. I loved the community. It's where we wanted to raise our children, and I was really, really fortunate to be able to do that. So when I moved into the principalship at Brown School, that was the first time I'd been at a different elementary school. I'd been at EP Clark for, I believe, 12 years at that point.
Wow.
And while it's a smaller district, that meant forging new relationships and meeting new people and helping to learn and support different styles of teaching and what school culture felt like at a different building within the same district. And I loved my 5 years at Brown School. It's a really, really special place. I think all of our schools are very special and have a little bit different climate in them.
Yeah.
Toward the end of my time in the principalship, I started learning more about elementary curriculum and what it might mean to be a curriculum director and guide those practices district-wide. And then had the opportunity to move into the assistant superintendent role. I did that for a couple of years, and then the superintendent position became available, and I had gone through a certification program years prior. And again, I never said no to an opportunity to learn and grow.
I love that.
Something came my way that felt like it suited me or would improve my practice and the practice of those around me. I took advantage of it, and I had some amazing mentorship along the way and moved into this role 2 years ago now.
Wow, I forgot, that you did come into the role 2 years ago. I feel similarly aligned. I am certified to be a school social worker that I got.
Oh, that's good
Don't
to
get
know.
too excited. I got that postpartum with my second child because my husband and I are both self-employed. We're both entrepreneurs. And what if there comes a time when we do need someone with health benefits? So I just got that as in my back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably started my understanding that there is so much more than just what I do with someone in a therapy room. It goes beyond into the systems. And so I'm a family systems therapist and kind of been nerding out recently, but I was going to say similarly aligned because I'm in the therapy room and I love it. I work with the most incredible families, the most incredible teens. I've just gotten so lucky. But I was like, there's more. There's all these systems that are affecting the families that I work with. And the more that I can speak to that politically, schools, communities, and strengthen that strengthens the families. And so that's kind of why I wanted to bring you in, because the schools are one of the first lines of defense for everything. I feel like schools are almost like the clearest mirror of how families are doing, right? And they're the first line of defense for academics, sure, but also feeding kids, making sure their basic needs are met, healthcare, mental health care. And I almost feel like it might be overburdening the system a little bit. We live in an incredible district where a lot of kids' basic needs are met, not everyone's for sure. When we talk about schools, we're not just talking about curriculum and test scores, right? We're talking about the larger ecosystem around kids. How are you guys navigating that? I feel like post-COVID, things have kind of shuffled around, and there's been things that have gotten harder and maybe things that have gotten easier.
No doubt the pandemic made an impact on schools and how students learn and how teachers think about teaching. No doubt about that. But I'll say well in advance of the pandemic, our district was really, really focused on relationships and the power of building strong relationships, not only with our students, but with their families and with each other. We are very proud to be a tight professional learning community where we work hand in hand with the people around us, and a true team at all of our levels. And a team includes the families that we nurture and support as well. And so how do we navigate it? We make some really thoughtful decisions about our practices, about ensuring that we look through a lens of equity, that we look through a lens of hiring the right people in the right places to support kids, being true to our values, being true to what we believe in St. Joseph Public Schools, and making sure we onboard people to understand that as well, and to understand that we do have incredible diversity in our district in lots of different ways. And that means that we have to adjust our practices for people who need different levels of support in different ways. I think many people would be surprised to know about the number of our families that suffer from food insecurity. And we have really important and special partnerships with local churches who bring bear packs to our kids for the weekends. And I think what we want to celebrate about that is not only the partnership, but also that our families feel safe to talk to us with confidence, that they need that support, and that everyone is at a different place at a different time. It's valuable to rely on your community for support. We're very rooted in our community. Within our school district. At least 10 years ago, we started with these daily check-ins of our students in elementary school, which bled to the secondary as well. But every single morning, people might be surprised to know students check in. Where are they at? What do they need? And if they need some additional support and they're not quite in the green zone, if you will, the teacher is able to go over right away, touch base with the student and say, what's going on? How can I help? What do you need? And we've had a lot of training over time in trauma-informed care and instruction. And also, we have a lot of support. We have a social worker in every single building. That's increased pretty tremendously over the past 10 years. And it's important. Sometimes the level of need and support is a little bit higher. And at that point, we have systems all set up to where the teacher can reach out and say, do you have a minute to pop in? And likewise, they can do that with the principal as well. The role of a principal is multifaceted, that they're supporting in many ways as well.
Do you feel like these types of needs, let's just go with like emotional and mental health, because that was the check-in, which also kind of cool that my podcast is called The Check-In.
Yeah, good connection.
A good connection. Do you feel like those needs have increased over the last 2 to 5 years?
I think that's a yes and. I think they might have increased in different ways. We're true believers that behavior is communication. And sometimes, we have to look beyond the behavior to understand what it's trying to communicate.
Yep.
We say that over and over again. Behavior is communication. What are we missing? What do we need to know? How do we help? How do we change, not only change the behavior, but change what's leading into the behavior? I would say probably over the past 5 or 6 years, the behavior maybe is communicated a little bit louder. But I would say that
that's fair.
When I was at EP Clark in first grade, Jessica Lafayette, who's another principal at EP Clark, was the first grade teacher right down the hall. I was the second grade teacher, and Lisa Knuth, the principal at Lincoln School, was the third grade teacher. And so we often had kids that we shared, from first grade to second grade to third grade, not always, but often. And so we've talked quite a bit about that. Like, do you think that it's increased significantly? Our roles have changed a little bit, so we're seeing a bigger lens than what we had in our classroom. But, I think that ultimately our students are students. They're learning. And it's our job beyond teaching them to read, beyond teaching them mathematics and all of the important things that we do all day long. It's also our job to help to nurture their spirit and to help them to understand how to socially interact. And that takes practice. And so I'm really proud in our district. We are a Kagan Cooperative Learning District where we train all of our teachers and we go back and retrain and recommit. And it's all about just developing the ability to process out loud about your thinking and to talk to others about your thinking, which helps to solidify your learning, but also to develop the social skills in the context within the classroom. And so we're a K-12, Kagan Cooperative Learning District, and we're really, really committed to making sure that students have the opportunity to share their thinking and to share their process so that others can learn from that, because everyone is a little bit more diverse in their thought, and that's important to talk about. So we embed that in all of our professional development and all of our learning.
Is that academic and emotional?
Yeah. Yes, I would
Okay.
say it is. Absolutely. I
Cool.
mean, it's about creating a culture of safety in your classroom so that students feel ready to talk. It's about team building so that they feel connected to the community. It's really about the culture and climate, not only that we set in our district and in our buildings, but in our classrooms. And
Yeah.
it takes practice. It absolutely takes practice. I think one of the things that we're really thinking deeply about right now as a district, and I would say this is probably where the biggest, I don't know about biggest, the pandemic had a lot of effects, but we were moving toward a one-to-one environment with technology. And as soon as the pandemic hit, just like other schools throughout the country, we had to quickly pivot and make sure that we were one-to-one so that students could connect and stay connected at school when they were home. And so now I think many people have read The Anxious Generation, and that has really helped us to think about a cell phone policy at the high school and what it's always been at the middle school. It also is making us think deeply about where's the balance between the need to prepare students, the need to introduce students to the world that we are living in, and also to make sure we hold on to what's really important in learning how to socialize and learning how to communicate our feelings effectively, and to be a productive member in our society. So I think schools probably everywhere are balancing that right now, but that's something we're thinking deeply about.
Oof, that just made me think of like 10 different things. The thing that I've been creating, this balance between safety and friction. Kids do need safety, but they also need friction. They need to be able to do hard things. And for one kid, you might be able to say this, this, and that. You got to go do that. Another kid might need a little bit more safety because they're navigating some other things. And how does a school respond to that with how many kids are in the district? I don't even know.
2,900.
2,900 kids, right? Who are all coming in with these unique experiences. I just think it's a lot of pressure.
You're going to hear me say it a lot because it's my core values, relationship and belonging.
Yeah.
When you have a relationship with kids and you spend the time to get to know them and their story, I'm not saying it's simple to differentiate and to give people all different things, but it's just the nature of what we do.
Yeah.
It's how we do it. Building grit, helping students to understand that while we don't want students to feel overwhelmed with pressure, that's also a part of growing. That struggle is important too. I would say you can't do that if you don't know them as a learner, if you don't know them as a person. But when there's psychological safety, our students will do so much more than I think that they think they're capable of.
Yeah. One of the things that I had written down as I was thinking about this is we can talk about school safety because that goes hand in hand with relational safety. And I think that's a big buzz thing too, is just safety in terms of like school shootings. I know that that's on the minds of a lot of people, but safety is not just keeping danger out, right? It's making sure one person notices when someone is not doing okay. I came into St. Joe High School with having had gone through some things. I lost my dad, some other trauma things, and I moved here because my mom got remarried after all of that. I feel like there were some St. Joe teachers that quite literally, I'm not being dramatic, like changed my life in a positive way where I didn't realize that I had potential in me until they noticed it and they pulled it out of me. And I became someone who was, just like an average student freshman year to like 4.0, accepted to University of Michigan. I didn't go to University of Michigan, but I was accepted, which I like to stand on.
That's very impressive.
Yes. And like, my creative writing teacher, Mrs. Campbell, who I don't know if you ever knew her, but she was like my absolute favorite teacher. I don't know where I'm going with that, but just to say that like St. Joe is a very special place. And I am somewhat connected because I have clients who go to St. Joe schools, but I feel like in some ways I didn't graduate too long ago, but it feels like things are different. Like it just feels like kids are struggling a little bit more. I don't know what your perspective is if you're seeing that in real time. I feel like now I hear about, turning things in on a certain time as a little bit more lax than maybe when I was in high school because they're trying to balance. We don't want a kid to be overwhelmed. How do we keep expectations without tipping to the point of like overwhelm and, I don't know.
I think maybe what you could be referring to, we have expanded what we call bear time, and it's our time in all of our buildings for students to have an opportunity for intervention if they need intervention, extension if they need that. And it's built into our schedule, which was something that was not a part of our schools 7, 8, 9 years ago. And so that's a really important opportunity for us. So I'll explain that just a little bit. Our students come late on Wednesday mornings. Our teaching teams are sitting down and analyzing student data and looking really deeply at what students need now. Some districts call that win time, what I need now time. And so they're analyzing that. Pretend 3 third grade teachers all gave the same quick assessment after they taught a lesson. And so they might look at that data together and see whose class may have done the best on that assessment. Every teacher has their kind of own art, but the science of teaching and what we're teaching and our standards has to be very aligned and similar so that students have a guaranteed and viable curriculum no matter what school or teacher they have. So that's been a lot of our work over the last 10 years. So when they sit down and look at this data, they might decide, wow, your class did great. Talk to me about the art, right? How did you teach that lesson? And so they'll talk about that. And then the students that may not have been as successful on that assignment, perhaps they'll go and see that teacher for that reteach. And then the other teacher now has some tools for his or her toolbox to be able to use for next time. So it's a really intentional job-embedded professional learning time where we're talking specifically about what students know and understand and what they might not yet and how we're going to change that. And the only way to really change that and to have that time to reteach the skill or to enrich the skill, if your student already has it, then how are we going to keep growing on that? The only way to do that is to have a time within your school day. Otherwise, there's an inequity in who might be able to stay after school. Maybe their parents can't pick them up after school or can't come early. And so we carve out this 20-minute time to be able to ensure that we can reteach or extend without pausing in our curriculum. Because certainly you could pause and then reteach the skill, but you can't do that all the time. And so then there could be gaps. You might hear sometimes like at the high school, I took a test and I failed it and I just had to fail it. And I just got an E on that or whatever. And I had to overcome that. Well, now it's a bit different. Now we say, okay, if you didn't do well, why didn't you? Let's look at your data. Let's look at your test and let's see why you didn't. Let's learn it and let's take it again. Because ultimately it's our job as teachers and their job as students to learn the most essential skills. And by failing and moving on, we're not necessarily learning the most essential skills. We're just skipping that, right? We're just skipping that and moving on. It's kind of a pedagogical shift over the past 10 years about what teaching and learning looks like. It's not about the letter grade necessarily. It's about the standards our students know and understand and can demonstrate on these high stakes assessments.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking about teacher burnout, workforce stability. I think in general, a lot of families are carrying things right now. And some of those families are teachers. So I think if a teacher has their own family, they're working, maybe their partner's working, they're going into the school day. It is not easy to be a teacher. So I think we can all agree with that. It's an important, huge job. I wish that teachers got paid more money. Just if anyone wants to hear that, and how they're carrying a lot of things. There's a lot of pressure on them and they're responsible for so many children. One of the things that I was worried about when sending my son to the public school was the ratio of teacher to kid. I don't have the data right now, but there have been a lot of teachers that have left the teaching profession and not as many people that are refilling those roles. Can you speak to that a little bit of, I don't know, what are the burdens on teachers?
It's an incredibly hard job. There's no doubt about it. Teachers wear their heart on their sleeve. They come every day because they love what they do and they love the people that they serve. It's a servant job, right? It can be incredibly fulfilling and you bring passion to your job every day. And sometimes it can also feel defeating. I think in any servant type of position, you can have your exhaustion and also your celebration. And I think one thing that I can speak to St. Joseph Public Schools specifically, I mentioned that we're a professional learning community and we don't take that lightly and we don't do it by ourselves. We believe in the power of a team. We believe in the power of connecting with the school social worker when we are concerned about a student. We work with the other teachers at the grade level or in the department to learn new strategies. You're not in it alone. We don't close our doors and do our own thing. We are a team. We're a community. Our administrators are hands-on and in classrooms as much as possible and supporting families off to the side as well. And so it's not a solo job. It's really important to rely on your team. I would say over the past few years, of course, our state has invested significantly in either alternate paths for teacher certification or grow your own type of programs to get people certified to be with kids that are great with kids. They were noticing that there was a decline in number of graduates in universities that were going into education-related fields. And Luckily, we have more and more people going into the profession, which is great. I think there's probably a lot of things related to the decline in teacher prep. Things are just a little bit different, not only within the classroom or within the schools, but within the way that pensions are structured and all sorts of things like that. Changes that happen in Lansing do trickle down and affect what happens in the workforce as well. And there's probably a lot of factors, but the great news is we are seeing more and more applicants for teaching positions. We were able to fill almost all of our teaching positions before spring break, which is amazing for the following year. And that just speaks to people being interested, not only in our school district and our community and our area, but also in the field of teaching. So that's exciting. It is something we keep a close eye on. It's something that we think deeply about. While we might not be able to control some of the external factors around how pensions are funded and healthcare and all of those types of things, we can certainly advocate for it, but we can also control what our culture feels like.
Sure.
There's been a lot of buzz, and rightfully so, about literacy and about the science of reading, and that's a pedagogical shift as well. Anytime we have a big shift, that includes a lot of new learning, and it includes the change in what we do in our classroom, which is important, but it's also stressful, having to learn new curriculum or new tools and a new way of doing things. And so we try to balance that with as many opportunities for professional growth and development that's job embedded, so that people aren't having to spend time away from their families to do that. And it's tricky. It is tricky.
Yeah. I'm a social worker. I care so much about the macro issues, and they absolutely trickle down into the individual. So dream scenario, what would you advocate for your kids if you were standing in front of, let's just say, Governor Whitmer?
I would say, well, we always appreciate a foundation allowance increase. We're funded by per pupil, and we always appreciate the increase. We had a zero increase a couple of years ago, which was surprising and tricky on our budget, right? Because school budgets have to be approved by their Board of Education before July 1st, but that's before we even know the state's budget. So you have to make your very best guess based on what all of the different budgets are coming out of the House, the Senate, and the governor, and try to find the middle ground. We create a budget to be approved by our Board of Education based on what we think the foundation allowance increase would be, because basically you look at your student enrollment, which would be your per pupil, and how much the state gives you for your per pupil allocation. If you're not cutting any programming, that's how you can make decisions for increases. And most of a school's budget is salary and benefits and things directly affecting kids in the classroom, which is the way it should be in a school, right? But in order to be able to pay people more and to give more, you have to be getting more too, and whether that means a student increase or a foundation allowance increase. So what would be great? Gosh, it would be great to know the budget in advance of having to create a budget, but that's why we have budget amendments. Last year, not having a budget until October was a big problem for
With
school
the free
districts.
lunches, right?
Absolutely. The
that
lunches was a big
hot
problem. Some school districts have to borrow in order to make salary because they're not a summer tax collector. We are in a great spot in that way, and we're so thankful to our community. But, there's a lot of factors to consider as far as school funding. I mentioned having a per pupil increase is always so appreciated and so important. Gas prices are increasing and it's more expensive at the grocery store. Well, it's more expensive for schools too, right?
Yeah.
And so when we think about our fuel for our buses, our supplies that we purchase, everything is going up. It's not isolated to only the home. It's also the school. And people want and deserve wage increases, right? And so all of that has to be a factor of the school budget. And so the school aid fund and ensuring that it's funded for K-12 appropriately is really important. And that's probably what I would most advocate for, because that makes a difference with what we can do in our classroom with our general fund.
Yeah, absolutely. Recently, our community went through trying to get a bond passed, and we can just speak to this briefly.
Sure.
And it did not pass. And then we got another bond passed that was a little bit more, conservative. What are you excited about with how that will actually impact people's, why it matters?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. The May 2024 bond did not pass. And we spent a lot of time going back to the community to learn why, to learn what the reservation was, and then use that feedback in order to build the next ask, which passed last November. And that was just under $60 million. And that really focused on the priorities in our facilities assessment and what our buildings need to be high functioning, to improve our learning environments as far as instructional technology and school safety, as well as just the important things like roofs that we needed to have replaced. So I'm excited about a lot of things with that. We are working on all of the plans right now with the architects for the addition at Lincoln School. And really the focus at Lincoln is we conducted a study of all of our classrooms district-wide and the size of those classrooms and the number of students that they serve within the classrooms. And Lincoln is our oldest building in the district, and it has so much character. We love Lincoln School. But so many of the classrooms are undersized and uniquely designed, right? Because that building is so, it's pretty old. Yeah, it needs some love as far as some renovation, but also we wanted to right size those classrooms and ensure that the students that experience class in 4th and 5th grade at Lincoln School have the same kind of space as their classmates over at Brown and EP Clark. So that's what the addition's about. It's not about increasing our enrollment. It's more about moving those classrooms into more appropriate size classrooms and reutilizing some of those smaller spaces for things like reading intervention that was taking place in hallways because we didn't have a spare classroom, or social work that was taking place in a newsroom. We had to be very creative and use those spaces in a different way. And so with the addition, we're able to move some of those student service programs into some of those smaller spaces. So we're excited about that. We're excited about some of the changes to Upton Middle School. We'll be looking at things like new flooring, ceilings, lighting, instructional technology, school safety as far as infilling the glass around the classroom doors, and working on some mass notification systems. And this summer, we're already working on roofs over at Brown School and at the high school.
I feel like when I attended some meetings about the first bond that was passing, I feel like there was almost a little bit of a lack of understanding of why this stuff matters. Like, why does a roof matter? There's just so much more that's happening in a school system than people maybe realize. If a kid needs reading intervention or they need social work services and they're in the hallway and kids are walking by to go to the bathroom, that's embarrassing. And I don't want to utilize that service then.
Right.
I've had kids that haven't even wanted to come to therapy, which is in a completely separate location because they're afraid of who will I pass when I leave. And so I think these are all really important things that we do need to be considering in our schools. And yes, of course, safety. I get nervous about that as a parent. You know, like some of the worst things have happened in elementary schools, and it's just scary. It's unsettling.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
State passed something about there needs to be some smartphone thing in place. And I'm totally butchering that, but that was passed, and that the district gets to implement how they incorporate that. I've heard the parents want their kids to have their phones in case of an emergency. Well, what's the balance? Have we almost given our kids anxiety because we're making them constantly available? It gives us this false sense of safety when in actuality, it could also be doing harm. So just where are you guys at with the district on these dang cell phones and how you think about them?
Well, once the legislation was passed, we were already well positioned because our high school had already moved into a new practice of no cell phones bell to bell. So kids either have to put them in a pocket or stow them away. We already had that in place for over a year. And I'll say we had a event happen, a swatting incident in different school districts around the county and throughout the state and nation had the similar incident. Finding the good, right? Allowed us the opportunity to make sure our practices were tight and how to refine them, and having no cell phones in the kids' hands, or half of the kids, because it occurred at lunchtime where the kids could have a cell phone at lunchtime, did help with our safety procedures. So it helped us to be able to ensure that the communication about the incident was very clear and that there weren't rumors and fear being passed to families while we were just figuring things out with the police, right? You never want those situations to happen ever. But when they do happen, you have to take them as a learning experience and figure out where we can refine practices and what we can celebrate that went well. And one thing that went well is that our kids knew what to do. Our kids knew where to report, and they reported quickly. I happened to be at the high school that day, so I was firsthand in the building, observing, helping. Yes, parents want to have access to what's happening. We live in a society where we have to know right away, right? We want to know right away, and especially when it's a situation that can be so frightening. And so as a district, we try to work really hard in communicating as fast as possible, but with facts.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes some time to figure out facts. So we have school safety teams in all of our buildings that are always looking at our practices and that are analyzing any type of threat assessment. I mean, that's all part of a school safety bill that our state put in play, which is great. And it's important for people to really focus on not only external factors, but internal factors too. How do we best support kids? You mentioned earlier in the podcast of how do we ensure one person at least is touching base with a student every single day and make sure that we know what's happening and can support them. That's part of what our team is doing, to be able to touch base with students that we might be concerned about and talk with their families about that. So I think it takes a lot of trust. It takes trust in our district from the parent side to know that we will communicate with you and we will share with you what's happening and we will do everything we can to make sure we're clear in our messaging.
Do you see this phone policy, no phone bell to bell, staying the same or getting more strict?
It's stricter at the middle school. At the middle school, there's no phones, period, all throughout the day. And that's been the way that we've had policy at our middle school and at our elementary schools. I think that is something we'll continue to analyze as much as we can limit that so that we can focus on academics is incredibly important. But students also want to check in, maybe on their job during lunchtime and things like that. So it's a balance. I think we're continuing to analyze that to make sure we're just making the best decisions, not only for our students and their engagement in the school day, but also balancing what our families might need. So we'll be putting out some surveys. We'll be looking at a new strategic plan. We'll begin analyzing stakeholder feedback and learning about where we can grow. And I anticipate that being a question that would be asked of our community.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a hard thing, like I talk with teens a lot and they love their phones and they love their social media. And I don't think it's necessarily all bad, but the kids I work with are coming for mental health reasons. There's some data out there that says kids with an existing mental health condition, they're just more susceptible to the risks of social media than maybe a child who's not. And so it is such a balance. I had someone on my podcast and she's doing a lot of research on AI and had definitely an opinion that challenged my opinion, I would say. I was like, AI, I don't know, it's not good. And she kind of was like, it's here. How are we going to do this? Instead of asking, is AI bad or is it good? We need to go, okay, it's here. So now what? How do we help kids build a relationship with AI? But some skills might not be the most important skills anymore. And she was like, if ChatGPT can write an essay for a kid, that might not be the way anymore to assess whether a child has learned the information. And so that's interesting to me. And what I wanted to hear your piece on of creative writing was my favorite class. That class was so amazing. Is that going to be a skill that's lost? I don't know.
I certainly hope not. And I agree that it's definitely a very important skill. I think we have an AI task force in our district. That task force has helped to shape some AI guidelines that we share with teachers, but also we share with students. The task force has teachers on it contributing and learning. And we've been to AI conferences, and our assistant superintendent, Amy Durham, is very, very connected to technological practices in AI. So we're thinking deeply about that all the time, and we have been for a few years. And you're absolutely right. It's here. And you're right. It's challenging traditional ways of assessing student learning, which to that pedagogical shift and that concern over the amount of time that the prep and the changing our practices might take.
Yeah.
You can look at it more positively and say, there's a lot of ways you can use AI to be more efficient in our job and in the data collection. Here's a small example. Is creative writing gone? No, it couldn't be. But here's what someone might do in that role. Maybe they would use AI to show an essay and do a peer analysis and have the student in our classrooms analyze the AI created version of an essay and learn what it might be missing, why it isn't great, what they could improve on. That could be a practice to understand that more. I think we're moving beyond having to catch students and really having to teach students, because not only is it not going away, it's getting better every month. And you're right. What will the jobs of the future look like now that AI is a part of it? It's an interesting shift for sure, but
it is.
You have to think differently.
Yeah. And I keep saying creative writing, and what I meant to say is college writing was my favorite class. Sure. But I figured it's all kind of together. It makes me think for someone who's dyslexic, and it's been very challenging to write an email that appears professional and maybe takes a lot of energy. They're able to utilize that in a way that's super helpful, I think. The pedagogical shifts with reading and how you guys are doing that. Reading's connected to writing. So just where are we going with all of that? And this idea of discernment, which I feel like is kind of what you're describing in the college writing lesson that you said of like, okay, so let's take the AI version and let's have discernment and kind of figure out like, why is this good? Why is this bad? What could be added, and living within that like gray space almost.
For sure.
I don't know. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, in my second grade class, when I was teaching writing to kids, I always wanted to pull out a great example of what it could look like. Because if students don't have an opportunity to see kind of what the ideal is or what we're searching for in that rubric, it can be difficult to achieve that sometimes. So think about how we could utilize AI to show different types of work without having to use student work or collect it from years before, right? And to protect that student dignity. There's all sorts of ways that we can look at it and think about things differently, but it's changing practices for sure.
I was driving to Chicago this past weekend. My sister had a baby and I was going there to like support her and stuff. It was so fun. I had the thought, not really at all the same as writing, as important as writing, but I was like, I don't ever look at a map. Like, I don't know map skills. There used to be probably an art about like creating maps and like that's obsolete. And I have no emotional feelings about not reading a map. You know what I mean? Like I put in my address into Google Maps and I go. Yep. And I was just like, is that what some of these skills are going to feel like in 10, 15 years? I don't know.
But also teaching that critical thinking along with it, right? Like if you enter that and it doesn't make sense, why might it not make sense? And how do you know it doesn't make sense? And how do you vet it? How do you trust it? Those are all the lessons that we're trying to teach to kids because AI is embedded in everything now. I mean, I think sometimes they don't even know that they're using it. Now on our devices, we have it locked in certain areas, right? And protect confidentiality and protect data. But those are lessons kids need to hear too, so that they can be thoughtful about their digital imprint.
Yeah. Well, my friend teaches at Lakeshore. She's an AP bio teacher. And we were talking about like, for two of us who are professionals in our career for a long time, if we use AI to assist with certain things, it's very different because we have this foundation of skills that we've learned the old school way. No AI was in my master's program. Yeah. Whereas a kid without foundational skills, they're not going to be able to, again, discern like, ooh, that's not good. Like, that's not right. What an interesting and difficult thing for you guys to have to be navigating as a school when you don't even know, like the technology is so fast. Like we can't even catch up with it ourselves as adults with like developed prefrontal cortex.
You're right. You're right. It's probably one of the biggest challenges in education today, I would say.
What's the district policy on AI?
So we have AI guidelines to where teachers communicate with students in advance of an assignment, like AI is appropriate for this, AI is not appropriate for this. So if it's an inappropriate use of AI, then it just falls under our policy for academic integrity. Yeah. Really falls under that. So we have board policy related to it. But also we're not in this space to where we're just trying to catch kids all the time. We're in a space to try to educate students about why to use it, why not to use it, when to use it, when to critically think about the results, all the things that we've talked about. And also it's not wide open on our school devices. I mean, we're exercising caution and protection of student information.
Well, I don't envy your position with all of that because I'm still trying to make sense of what I think about it,
You talked about being a 2012 grad and the teachers that you remember and how they impacted your life. I think what's really neat is that while we are facing a teacher retention problem throughout the United States, we're not feeling it as much here in St. Joseph Public Schools. While we do lose amazing people, don't get me wrong, people often come here to stay here. And whether it's the support they receive and the beauty of the community or just feeling a part of a school family, I think that can't be overstated. We have people that come back, right? That leave to go away to school and come back, whether to work for us or be in the community to have their children as a part of our schools. And I think that's really special. As I was going around the community to talk about our bond proposal last fall, I hosted several coffee chats throughout the community and had a lot of alumni come to talk to me just about what was so special about their school experience and what they remember about the different buildings. And I just think it's a really dynamic place to be. I talked about the principals that I worked with in the same hallway. We think deeply about professional growth and development of our staff and about how to best support students, which often can lead to leadership role within the district. I think we're all leaders. I think we lead in our own ways, but to more of an administrative role. When we look at the admin team, so many of the admin team either sat in the classrooms at Lincoln School, or they sat at St. Joseph High School as a student and they wanted to stay here, or maybe they went and experienced leadership in a different area but came back to St. Joseph Public School. I think it's a really special community. It's a supportive board of education, a team of leaders who care deeply about the families and the students that we serve. And it's the teachers and the support staff that just love what they do, and they come every day ready to help in every way that they can. It's special.
Yeah, it is. I graduated from St. Joe and was like, I'll never live here. I'm gone. And I moved to Manhattan at 18 years old. God bless my mother. I feel so bad for her. And was like, that's it. And then I came back and accidentally met my husband, who was like rooted here, who wasn't a St. Joe kid or anything, and was like, okay, I guess I'm here. And I kind of fought it a little bit. And I remember talking to friends who did not grow up here, and they were like, just like oozing with gratefulness that they get to raise their family in this town. They're like, it's like we live in a vacation spot. It's beautiful. It's amazing. So many good resources. And it kind of made me go, yeah, like what am I fighting? And I think it's just that some people do need to go, and they need to go experience other things and come back. And I've been lucky enough to do that. And now having kids in the district, I'm just like, wow, this is feeling very full circle.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine that. And I want to say too, our foundation raises so much money to be kind of the icing on the cake. They often say that. So, something enriching and above and beyond what typical classroom experiences can be. And, they collect donations throughout the whole school year and give right back to our classrooms over $1 million. I mean, it's amazing.
Wow.
It's amazing. And then the Maize and Blue Fund, which is a newly formed fund to support athletics and their coaches and our players. They have such a focus on how can we support kind of the bigger picture of athletics beyond a boosters club. And now it's about like student athlete wellness and thinking deeply about how to nurture the athletes and how to support the whole athlete, ensuring student engagement at athletic events by reducing barriers and giving every student free admission into any home game. I mean, all of those things make a big impact on your school's culture and your sense of belonging and excitement for learning. We have amazing people throughout our community that care deeply about what happens in our hallways.
Yeah, we are so lucky. That Maize and Blue Fund is so cool because you're right. It does reduce barriers for every kid to be able to go to an athletic event. And, you've been in the district for so long. Do you feel like you have a good beat on like what other schools are grappling with that maybe don't have all of those supports? Like, can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, it would need to come from their general fund. And when that comes out of their general fund, that comes out of the amount of money that you can use within your classrooms. So, I mean, we are just so lucky that we have that support. But we need things like bond issue in order to do facility improvements. You can't save enough money to do those big projects to improve your facilities. So there's lots of different funding sources, but we're just so lucky for the foundation and the fund, Maize and Blue Fund, that can be that icing on the cake so our kids have that incredibly rich experience at school.
Yeah. If someone was listening to this and they're like, ooh, I want to donate to the Maize and Blue Fund, or I want to get involved with
the St. Joseph Public Schools Foundation. Yes.
There is a direct how can they get involved?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So our website is sjschools.org, and there's a direct link to both the Maize and Blue Fund's website and the St. Joseph Public Schools website. There's pages that talk about what they do, why they believe in it, and how to donate. But the Maize and Blue Fund was really started through our athletic director and 2 members of our board of education, one being a St. Joe graduate who felt that athletics made such an impact on who he became as a leader in his communities. Both the foundation and the fund are just deeply rooted in what schools need and how to best support kids. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I think I'm so passionate about that too, because I believe in the whole system, right? Like, yes, the academics are important, but for some kids, the theater class is going to be completely shaping to who they become, or band or orchestra, all of these other areas that helps them develop into themselves in a way that like has transformational effects of like, what career do they go into? I did not think I was going to be a social worker, like that was not the plan, not the goal. And somehow over my circuitous path, I found my way into this role. And so just these little tiny things that people think, oh, it maybe doesn't matter or whatever, like it does matter. It matters deeply.
Yes.
Yeah. I can't not plug mental health. And like I said, I got my school social work certification. And, it's funny when you said all behavior is communication, I was like, oh, that's where I got that from, because I say that to parents all the time. And I'm like, I don't know where I picked it up in my training, but it's from, the PBIS and all that tier training and all that stuff.
Yeah, multi-tier systems of support.
But obviously, I am in private practice. I am private pay, and I'm not in the school. And so I've always felt this conflict of, okay, great for the kids that can afford that, which is just so much privilege of a parent that can take their kid out of school, they can go pick them up, leave work, or if they're not working, pick the kid up from school, bring them to me, bring them back, get them lunch on the way if they're skipping lunch, like all of these barriers that have to be passed to be able to come to me. I don't like that, which is actually one of the reasons why I started the teen groups that I do. I run like a teen girl group. And again, just like a much cheaper option. It's on a Sunday to like reduce barriers. And if someone couldn't afford it, they could come for free, because I felt guilty. And I was like, I know that the power of kids getting together and feeling seen and being like, oh, I'm not the only one that struggles with this. The podcast came out of that feeling too of like, okay, so what if a parent can't come to therapy? Like, what is other ways that they can get quality information that's not taking time away from work? There's a big mental health crisis. There's a lot of buzz about that. How do you see the connection between mental health therapists and the facilities that we have in the area and the school connection? And like, where would you like to see that strengthen? What would you like to see your schools be able to provide?
You're right about the barriers that families encounter and the accessibility that families encounter and how difficult it can be to get the help that they need for their kids. You are right about that. Our school social workers are advocates for kids, work hard with community mental health, work hard with families to get the kind of support that they need. But it's not therapy within the school day.
Right.
It's touching base. It's being an advocate. I think that there are many opportunities for a partnership to ensure that students get what they need without having to jump leaps and bounds over so many barriers that impact the ability to improve their overall life. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big problem. What do I see in the future? I would love to see greater accessibility. I'm not sure if that looks like access within a school day, if that looks like more therapists available for kids, shorter waits, removing financial barriers for families. All of those things are really, really, really important. And you're right, students are struggling. We see it in absences. We see it in behavior.
Yep.
Families are struggling and can sometimes just need further resources.
Yeah.
And I think if I could shake a magic wand, I would love to see people wanting to access mental health with less shame, more of a sense of belonging around community support.
Yeah. When I was in my school social work certification, they talked a lot about the school being the hub for all the things, like having healthcare, dental care, mental health care within the school ecosystem. Like, do you see that as being important, or do you see that as being unattainable? Or
I think it's very important. Every school district has different needs, and they have different needs as far as student support and staff support. And I think you have to know your community. You have to have a good gauge on what your students need and when they need it, and how to remove barriers best you can in any way. And different school districts are funded very differently too, just based on programming, based on demographics within their district. I think school districts face a really difficult challenge in having to balance their highest priority of needs within their community. And again, the only way you know the highest priority of needs is when you seek stakeholder feedback and you are present and you are making decisions based on your strategic plan. You're making decisions, which is based off of your stakeholder feedback on what your community is telling you, right? I think partnerships are incredibly important. I do think that funding can be difficult for certain districts to do community health type of services. Is it important that all kids have access? Absolutely. Does that look different in different districts? Maybe.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good answer. Yeah. Just always coming back to that relationship piece, right? And that there's not a one size fits all to education. There's not a one size fits all to how to run a district. I love seeing a woman in this role. Wait, what do you think is the hardest part about being a superintendent? I meant to ask you that earlier, but as we start to close, I'm sure you get, people that have opinions and stuff.
That's a great question. I've said it before. I'm a relational leader. I'm a servant leader. It's important to me to be in touch with the community. The coffee chats this past fall were really, really exciting and important to be out and about. I'm very connected to the school community and within our buildings, but the greater community. I'm an active member of different service clubs so that I'm getting to know people in different spaces and not only within our school community, and trying to branch communication out to all of our stakeholders, because it's important that they know what's happening with our kids and with our staff in our district. A little bit about me. When I was in second grade, I said, I'm going to be a second grade teacher, period, hands down.
Aw.
And so that's where I spent most of my career in second grade. And then when I was in college, I took a political science class and I said to my dad, I'm really interested in this. He said, stay the course. You know what you want to do. And then a couple of years later, I took a course and I said, Dad, maybe I'm interested in business. I think it's super, intriguing. Stay the course. And coming full circle into my position now, of course, academics and teaching and learning is the heart of what we all do in schools. But also there's a business side and there's a politics side and all of that. And it just feels like it all came full circle into maybe what I was meant to do. And I love it. I love listening and supporting as best I can, but you have to make hard decisions that won't always make everyone happy. And that can be difficult sometimes.
Yeah. Do you feel like the pressure, is the pressure intense?
We have an amazing team and I don't make decisions by myself. I'm not a siloed type of a leader.
Yeah.
I listen and I think about impacts. And I have an amazing board of education that I work with that's supportive and they help me to see things in a different way. So, I'm lucky. I'm also a parent in the district. So I have that hat too, right? And
that's an
I
important
have
hat.
that parent hat, which when you make decisions, sometimes you don't always know the impact on that individual, or maybe oftentimes you don't know. So being a parent helps me to see it through the kids' lens too.
Yeah. Is that hard for your kids at all to have their mom as a superintendent?
It probably is. It probably is. I have awesome kids. Their biggest excitement when I became the superintendent was that I got to call the snow days. So that is some serious pressure.
I love that. That's so innocent and sweet.
When the phone rings in the morning, that's when they find out. Snow day. No,
that's sweet.
They ask the night before, Mom, please. No.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Well, I have loved getting to chat with you from both being a therapist in the community, being a mom of a kid at the St. Joe schools, being a graduate from St. Joe schools. I just really appreciate your time and, just speaking to me and being on the podcast to check in with Dillan.
Thank you so much for asking me to be a part of it. I really enjoyed it as well.
When I'm thinking about this episode, I'm thinking about the fact that no single person and no single institution can raise, educate, protect, and support a child alone. Not the parent, not the teacher, not the therapist, the school social worker, the principal, or the superintendent. Children do best when the adults and systems surrounding them communicate, collaborate, and understand the role each person is meant to play. That's what a multidisciplinary approach is really supposed to be. And it's not just like a professional phrase or another meeting added to an already full calendar. It means a child doesn't disappear into the space between home and school, between a pediatrician and a therapist, or between a family asking for help and a system that's too overwhelmed to respond. It means every student has access to a connected and supportive school environment. Some students receive additional targeted support, and children with more intensive needs can access qualified clinical care. The goal isn't to turn teachers into therapists or schools into mental health clinics. The goal is to make sure teachers aren't carrying the responsibility alone, and that when a child needs more than a school can provide, there's somewhere accessible, trustworthy, and adequately resourced for that family to turn. This conversation also reminded me that the things we sometimes dismiss as administrative, financial, or political are deeply personal. A school budget becomes the number of adults available to notice a struggling child. A classroom becomes a place where a student either feels safe enough to participate or learns how to disappear. A private, thoughtfully designed space allows a child to receive reading intervention, which is so crucial to the foundation that sets up the rest of their life. Or maybe a private place to meet with a school social worker without feeling exposed or ashamed. A phone policy affects attention, relationships, learning, and even how information spreads during a crisis. And a teacher who feels supported has more capacity to offer students both the safety they need and the healthy friction that helps them grow. We can celebrate what's special about this community without pretending every child enters the classroom with the same resources, stability, or opportunities. We also have to acknowledge that not every district has the funding, staffing, partnerships, or community support discussed in this episode. Gratitude shouldn't make us complacent. It should make us more invested in building systems where a child's access to support isn't determined by their zip code, their family's income, or whether one exhausted adult happens to have enough capacity left to navigate another complicated process. Throughout our conversation, Kristen kept returning to relationships and belonging. And yes, they sound simple, but they are not small. Belonging is part of the infrastructure that allows children to learn, take healthy risks, recover from mistakes, ask for help, and tell the truth when they're not okay. Sometimes, changing a child's life requires intensive intervention. Sometimes it does require better policy, adequate funding, or a coordinated team of professionals. And sometimes it just begins with one adult. Thank you, Superintendent Kristen Bawks, for joining me. This has been the Check-In with Dillan, where we slow down, get curious, and make people make sense.